Okay, so now we're at 4.1.2, and now we're going to learn about the data type numbers, which is a primitive data type, but I haven't gotten there yet to show you what that is. So let's follow the curriculum. So now here we are, 4.1.2, more on numbers. When you type a large integer value, you might be tempted to use commas between groups of 3 digits, as in 42,000. This is not a legal integer in JavaScript, but it does mean something else, which is legal. Okay, so let's go ahead, and you can see it right here. We have a console.log and we have 42,000. This is the correct way to write 42,000. You can't use a comma. But if you do decide to use a comma, what is it doing? It is saying to you or to the compiler that that comma is a space. It puts a space in between the numbers. So it gives you 42 and 0, but it doesn't give you all 3 zeros. It just gives you 1 because all it sees is that 1 0. And how that really works, so you can understand, it goes back to kind of binary numbers. And in binary numbers, when you think about zeros and ones, because it's a base 2 system, 0 in binary numbers represents off or false. 1 represents on or true. So when you see zeros, what the compiler sees, because in binary numbers they're called bits, and each bit in a binary number is a switch, because like I said, 0 is off, 1 is on. And so when it sees that space with the comma and gets to that first 0, all it knows is that they're all off, meaning that is only sees 1 0. So that's in a nutshell of what that means, but we'll go deeper into that later. But I just kind of want to explain how the compiler sees it. Now, well, that's not what we expected, right? Because of the comma, JavaScript choose to treat 42,000 as a pair of values. In fact, the console.log function can print any number of values as long as you separate them by commas. Notice that the values are separated by spaces when they are displayed. So that comma represents a space, and that'll make sense to you later on. Now notice here, it's introducing this console.log as a function. But let me explain something to you. Everything in JavaScript is an object, except for primitive data types. Strings, numbers, which I will show you all 7 of the primitive data types because there are 7. But strings and numbers are primitive data types. Why? Because they are immutable. Immutable, meaning they cannot change. So here, console.log, and I'll show you later on, really this console is an object. This dot right here is an access modifier, and this log is a method. It's not going to make sense right now, but that's okay, because later on we're going to build upon this. I'm giving you one step at a time. I'm giving you one layer at a time. So let's keep going forward. Now here's an example. We have console.log, and we're logging out 42, 17, 56, 34, 11, 4.35, and 32. All of these are numbers. Notice they're separated by commas. So if you want to separate some things, separate them by commas. Now, let me copy this, because you always want to play around with the code. I'm going to go back to that replit. I think I still have it open. Here we go. I still have that replit open. And so I'm going to paste that in. Now, when I run this, you see I have the numbers. What happens if I remove, how about this? How about if I add a space after that 42? Is it going to give me an extra space? Let's see. No, it didn't. If I go ahead and remove all the spaces, would these numbers be closer together? So I'm going to just remove those spaces. So now let me run it. No, because JavaScript is not seeing the white space. That comma is the white space. So if I remove that comma now and I hit run, I get an error. Why? Because it says syntax error. It is missing a parenthesis. Now, last time, when it's missing the parenthesis, because what the compiler is seeing, that it sees that number 42. Now, when it sees that empty space, it's looking for a parenthesis. It's nothing there to tell it anything. It's not making sense to the compiler, basically. And so I could do something else. Let me try this. What happened? Am I going to get a syntax error? Let's see. Oh, what did it just do? Remember, the plus sign is an addition. Remember, we just created an expression. We just, a pure expression. It evaluated this value. This is why I want you to see this. I want you to play around with it so you could get a better understanding. But then you notice on line 2, the console.log, you got 3.4, then we have a string hello, and then we have another number, and it prints it all out. Now, understand this, is that in JavaScript, it's, we call it dynamically typed or loosely typed or weak type, meaning that you can mix data types in a variable or mix data types in an array. You can't do that in a statically typed language like Java, which we will learn that in the next unit. So get your head around this. This makes sense. Now play around with this after the video. Add a plus sign right here and see what happens. And put a comment inside of the chat saying, oh, that makes sense to me, because if you can see it, then you'll be able to understand it better. So, okay, let's go back. Now it says, remember not to put commas or spaces in your integers, no matter how big they are. We just did that. When I put that space there, that space actually is in the ASCII table. We'll talk about that later, and it'll make sense when I kind of introduce you a little bit to binary numbers. Also, revisit what we said in chapter How Programs Work. Formal languages are strict. The notation is concise. And even the smallest change might mean something quite different from what you intended. Going forward, don't get stuck here again. Go ahead and keep going to the end of the chapter and then come back and review this later. Because, like I said, the more you practice, the more you improve. All right, see you in the next video.